What time is it?
It's 12 o'clock noon.
Oh wow, it means it's lunchtime.
Well, in South Africa, but in other countries, it could be breakfast or supper
Or snack time.
Hi everyone! My name is Shadea.
My name's Shadesh.
Welcome to a video ministry of Grace TV. Here we serve bite-sized spiritual meals.
Or you can call it Bible study online.
This is every weekdays.
From Tuesday until Friday.
So wherever you are in the world,
Before having anything else,
Soul Food First! Now on Season 2!
This is Pastor Din Padayhag. Welcome to Soul Food. Yesterday we talked about how God made a covenant of the law with the people of Israel, His special and chosen people. God has given them the adoption, the glory, the covenants, the giving of the law, the service of God, and the promises. And then the patriarchs, and according to the flesh, Jesus Christ came through them. On the other hand, during this time that God was dealing particularly with the nation of Israel, we Gentiles were considered without Christ, aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. We also learned about the various covenants God made with Israel. We talk about Abrahamic covenant, which concerns the land of promise, or the land of Israel. We also talk about Mosaic covenant, which concerns the chosen people, the people or the nation of Israel. And then we talk about the Davidic covenant, which concerns a king and a kingdom. But these are not all. God also provided people to accomplish His promise, His plan, and His purpose for His chosen people of Israel. Number one, God provided Israel judges. These are the people who served as leaders in times of crisis in the period before an Israelite monarchy was established. Most of them are found in the book of Judges. There are about 12 judges mentioned in this book, and we have Gideon, Deborah, Othniel, Samson. These are just some of the judges that are familiar to us. And then number two, God provided Israel kings. These kings are political leaders to govern the people of Israel. The first king of Israel was Saul, and then followed by David, and then his son Solomon. Number three, God provided Israel priests and prophets. These priests were men set apart for special religious duties. They were acting as mediators and representatives of people to God. They were also involved in offering sacrifices and also other functions related to worship. And then the prophets were men divinely called and inspired by God to deliver messages, particularly in relation to future events. They were interpreting and proclaiming the truth. And our Bible is full of their writings. Some of their writings are short, others are very long. But they were people who were speaking for God to the people of Israel. Number 4, God provided Israel scribes. These men were originally secretaries or writers. They were recording the accounts of what happened during that particular time. And most of them, they were associated with kings and prophets. Number 5, God provided Israel elders. These were leaders in the community or among the tribes. And then in the New Testament, number 6, God provided Israel apostles. These were people Christ sent out to proclaim the gospel of the kingdom to the people of Israel. And we have the 12 apostles that Christ has chosen during his time. And then also number 7, God provided Israel deacons. These were appointed officials mandated to perform certain duties, generally of a subordinate in nature. Now, all of them, both political and religious leaders, were given by God to ensure that God's plan for Israel will come to pass. But it is very sad, as we have learned over and over again, that despite the laws, the commandments of God, despite the political and spiritual leaders, despite religious leaders, the people of Israel kept disobeying God's laws and rejecting God through worshiping idols or worshiping other gods. And so God the Father had enough with these people. In the book of Malachi, the last book of the so-called Old Testament, Prophet Malachi was addressing specific issues of the people of Israel, such as divorce, infidelity, mixed marriages, hypocrisy, complacency, arrogance, and false worship. And these are just some of the sins of the people of Israel. The people of Israel keep rejecting God the Father over and over again. And every time that this rejection happens, God would allow the enemies of Israel to take over their land and conquer the people. And that was exactly what happened in between the book of Malachi and the book of Matthew. While it is usually divided with that empty page or a couple of pages there are about 400 silent years in that part of our scriptures. God was so quiet there. God did not send any message to the people of Israel. God did not send any messenger, any prophet to his chosen people. So, what exactly happened between the close of the book of Malachi and the commencement or the beginning of the book of Matthew? Well, of this period of history, we have no inspired records, meaning we don't have the account from the scriptures itself, but secular history tells us of what happened. Because of the unbelief of Israel and their rejection of God, Israel as a nation lost their political supremacy. God allowed them to be conquered by other nations, and they were governed by these nations, as we will be studying now. We will not go through all of these historical details because of our time, but we would like to mention this account to give you an idea of what happened during these 400 silent years. Number 1, the nation of Israel were under the Persian rule for about 9 to 8 years. And then second, they were under Greece or the Greco-Macedonian power under Alexander the Great for about 164 years. That's very long years to be under other power. Number 3, they were under the Syrian rule with the wicked Antiochus the Great and his successor Antiochus Epiphanes for about 104 years. And then They were under the Roman government. And we learned that as we look at the book of Matthew, the people of Israel, they were already under the power of the Roman Empire during that time. Herod Antipater was appointed ruler during this time, and then he was succeeded by his son Herod the Great. And while it was Herod who rebuilt the temple with great splendor, he was also a wicked and a cruel man. This is the same Herod that ruled the people of Israel when Jesus Christ was born. Beloved, tune in next week as we continue learning about the dispensation of the law. And we are praying that you all have a fantastic weekend. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy your soul food.